2026 will not reward your intentions. It will only pay you for what you do daily. Ladies and gentlemen, 2026 is not waiting on you to get ready. It's already moving fast, focused, and unforgiving. And here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Your future is not decided by your dreams. It's decided by how you control your day. See, your day is not a calendar full of tasks. Your day is a battlefield. Every morning, two forces wake up with you: your intentions and the world's interruptions. Whoever wins the morning controls the outcome. If you don't command your day will command you. Winners don't wake up asking, "What should I do today?" They wake up knowing, because decision-making is expensive. And successful people pay that cost in advance. Before 2026 even starts, you must decide who you are becoming, what you will no longer tolerate, and what a winning day actually looks like. Reaction is a tax paid by the unprepared. Let me simplify success for you. You don't need 15 goals today. You need one target that moves the needle, one action that, if completed, makes the day a win, even if everything else goes wrong. Momentum doesn't come from doing more. It comes from doing what matters most. First, focus creates force. Force creates results. Everyone gets 24 hours. Not everyone gets clarity. Your most valuable asset is not your schedule. It's your energy at its peak. Guard your best hours. That's when you create, decide, build, lead. Don't waste premium energy on discount. Activities. Low-value tasks deserve low-energy moments. Let me say this plainly. If everything is important, nothing is. Most people are exhausted because they're doing things they were never meant to do in the first place. Ask yourself daily, can this be eliminated? Can this be automated? Can this be delegated? Freedom is not found in hustle, it's found in leverage. Winners don't end the day scrolling. They end it scoring. 3 questions. What did I do right today? What did I do wrong today? What will I do differently tomorrow? No emotion, no excuses, only feedback. Reflection is how effort turns into excellence. 2026 doesn't require a new personality. It requires a new daily system. Control the morning, win the day, stack the days, and the year has no choice but to obey. Because when you control your day, you control your destiny. Your day is a battlefield, not a calendar. A calendar makes life look neat, organized, predictable, boxes, hours, reminders, meetings. But the moment you wake up, reality proves something very different. The day doesn't politely wait for you to execute your plans. It attacks. Notifications fire before your feet touch the floor. Other PLE's priorities rush toward you with urgency. Noise, opinions, problems, distractions, all competing for one limited resource, your attention. On a battlefield, hesitation is costly. Confusion is deadly. And the soldier who waits to react instead of choosing a strategy in advance rarely survives. The same is true with your day. If you wake up without a plan, you don't stay neutral, you surrender. You hand control of your time, energy, and focus to whoever is loudest, closest, or most persistent. That's not productivity, that's captivity. Every day, there is an invisible war between what matters most and what screams the loudest. Emails don't mean importance. Meetings don't mean progress. Activity doesn't mean achievement. Yet most people confuse motion for momentum and busyness for winning. They spend their days responding instead of directing, reacting instead of deciding, surviving instead of advancing. By the end of the day, they're exhausted, but nothing meaningful moved forward. A battlefield demands awareness. You must know where the threats are coming from. Distractions are not accidental, they are strategic. Every app, alert, and interruption is designed to pull you away. ROM deep focus. If you don't recognize that, you'll keep wondering why your days feel full, but your life feels stuck. Winning doesn't come from doing more, it comes from defending what matters. On a battlefield, you don't protect everything equally. You protect what is mission critical. In your day, your mission is the activity that creates progress, income, growth, or impact. That mission must be defended aggressively. It needs boundaries. It needs time blocks. It needs your best energy, not the leftovers after everyone else has taken their share. When you treat your priorities casually, the world treats them as optional. A battlefield also requires leadership. Someone must decide what happens next. If you don't lead your day, it will be led for you. Leadership starts with intention. Before the day begins, you decide what a win looks like. Not 10 wins. One meaningful action that moves your life forward. When that is done, the day cannot defeat you, even if chaos surrounds it. And let's be clear, battles aren't always loud. Some of the most dangerous ones are silent. Procrastination doesn't shout. Comfort whispers. Distraction disguises itself as productivity. You can lose an entire day without realizing a fight ever happened. That's why discipline matters more than motivation. Motivation shows up when it feels good. Discipline shows up because the mission demands it. At the end of a battlefield, there is always an assessment. What worked, what failed, what must change. If you don't review your day, you repeat your mistakes. Reflection turns experience into wisdom. Without it, you keep fighting the same losing battles, blaming the enemy instead of fixing your strategy. When you understand that your day is a battlefield, your behavior changes. You stop treating time casually. You stop giving access to everyone. You stop confusing urgency with importance. You become intentional, decisive, and protective of your focus. And that's when progress accelerates, not because the world got easier, but because you finally took command. Control the battlefield, and the calendar will obey. Decide the outcome before the day begins. Single discipline separates people who feel in control of their lives from people who feel like life keeps happening to them. Most people wake up and let the day introduce itself. They check their phone, scan messages, absorb probable EMS, and then start reacting. By the time they realize what they should be doing, their best energy is already gone. The day didn't beat them with effort, it beat them with indecision. Every day carries a cost for decision making. Each choice you postpone drains focus, clarity, and momentum. When you start the day undecided, you spend the morning negotiating with yourself. What should I work on first? What can wait? What's urgent? That internal debate looks harmless, but it quietly burns your most valuable resource. High performers don't wake up to decide, they wake up to execute. The decisions were already made when the mind was calm, not when the day was demanding. Deciding the outcome in advance means you define what winning looks like before the noise begins. Not emotionally, not vaguely, clearly. It means you choose the one result that, if achieved, makes the day successful regardless of everything else. When that decision is made early, your actions align naturally. You move with purpose instead of pressure. You stop chasing every request and start honoring the mission you set. Clarity creates speed. When you already know the outcome you're driving toward, distractions lose their power. You don't need willpower to say no. The answer was decided before the question arrived. That's why preparation feels boring to people who live on adrenaline, but it feels liberating to people who value results. They're not constantly choosing. They're following a path they already committed to. This discipline also removes emotional volatility. When the day goes off script, as it always does, you don't panic. You adjust without abandoning the goal. Because the outcome is fixed, only the method is flexible. That mindset turns obstacles into variables instead of excuses. You stop asking, can I still win today? And start asking, how do I adapt and still deliver? Deciding in advance also builds self-trust every time. You do what you said you would do. Confidence compounds. You stop relying on motivation and start relying on identity. You become the person who follows through. Over time, that consistency reshapes how you see yourself. You don't just have good days. You expect them because they were designed, not hoped for. Most people overestimate what they can do in a moment and underestimate what they can do with preparation. They wait for inspiration to strike instead of installing structure. But structure is what frees your creativity. When the destination is clear, your mind is free to focus on execution instead of confusion. That's when work becomes sharper, faster, and more effective. Deciding the outcome before the day begins also forces honesty. It exposes what truly matters. You can't hide busyness when you've already defined success. Either you moved the needle or you didn't. That level of clarity can be uncomfortable, but it's also empowering. It replaces excuses with ownership. The day will always bring surprises. You cannot control everything that happens to you, but you can control what you're committed to accomplishing. When the outcome is decided early, the day bends AR. Own that decision. Not because life gets easier, but because you stop wasting energy trying to figure out who you are and what you want in the middle of chaos. When you decide first and act second, you stop drifting and start directing. And that is how ordinary days begin producing extraordinary results. One primary target per day creates momentum because focus is the force that moves results foe. Most people overload their days with long lists, believing productivity means doing as much as possible. What actually happens is the opposite. Attention gets fractured, energy gets diluted, and nothing meaningful receives enough effort to create real progress. By the end of the day, there is activity everywhere but achievement nowhere. Momentum dies not from laziness, but from dispersion. A single primary target changes how the entire day operates. It gives your actions a center of gravity. Everything else either supports that target or becomes secondary. When you know exactly what must be accomplished, your mind stops wandering. Decisions become simpler. You don't waste energy constantly switching tasks because switching itself is expensive. Every transition costs clarity, and clarity is what drives quality work. Momentum is not built by intensity alone, it's built by completion. Finishing one meaningful task creates psychological movement. Your brain registers progress, and progress fuels confidence. Confidence then fuels speed. That's why people who win consistently often appear calm rather than frantic. They're not chasing everything, they're advancing one step at a TI. Me with precision. One completed target today makes tomorrow easier to win. Most people mistake urgency for importance. They allow emails, messages, and minor requests to dominate their schedule because they feel immediate. But urgency is loud, not valuable. A primary target forces you to confront what actually moves your life forward. It exposes the difference between being busy and being effective. When you commit to one target, you stop negotiating with distractions. You already know what deserves your best energy. This approach also protects your mental stamina. When you try to accomplish everything, you carry the weight of unfinished work all day. That invisible pressure drains motivation. With one primary target, your focus narrows and your energy stabilizes. Even if other tasks are they don't overwhelm you because the most important win has already been secured or is clearly in progress. A single target also creates alignment. Your thoughts, time, and effort are no longer pulling in different directions. That alignment produces quality. Quality produces results, and results produce belief. Over time, this compounds. One win leads to another. Small daily victories act into unstoppable momentum, not through dramatic effort, but through disciplined simplicity. People often resist this idea because it feels limiting. They worry that focusing on one thing means neglecting everything else. In reality, it means mastering what matters. You still handle responsibilities, but they no longer control you. They orbit around your main objective instead of replacing it. The day becomes intentional instead of reactive. Momentum is fragile at the beginning. It doesn't require massive action, it requires consistency. A primary target gives you something you can reliably achieve and repeat. Repetition creates rhythm. Rhythm creates confidence. Confidence creates acceleration. That's how progress becomes sustainable rather than exhausting. Over time, this habit apes your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is trying and start seeing yourself as someone who finishes. That shift is powerful. Finishers win more often, not because they are more talented, but because they respect focus and understand leverage. One primary target per day is not about doing less. It's about doing what matters first, fully, and without distraction. When you commit to that discipline, momentum stops being something you chase. It becomes something you generate day after day until progress feels inevitable. Energy management beats time management because time is fixed, but energy is flexible. Everyone gets the same 24 hours, yet the results people produce inside those hours are wildly different. The difference is not discipline alone, and it is not effort alone. It is how well a person protects, directs, and multiplies their energy. You can schedule every minute of your day and still feel exhausted, unfocused, and unproductive if your energy is mismanaged. Time management assumes all hours are equal. They are not. An hour of high energy can outperform 5 hours of low energy. When your mind is sharp and your body is alert, you think faster, decide better, and execute with precision. When your energy is depleted, everything takes longer. Mistakes increase and motivation disappears. That is why some people work all day and feel like they did nothing, while others work a few focused hours and create meaningful results. Most people waste their best energy without realizing it. They give it away to distractions, unnecessary conversations, and low-value tasks. By the time they get to the work that actually matters, their energy is gone, and they rely on force instead of focus. That is a losing strategy. Your most important work deserves your strongest attention, not what is left over after the day is drained. Managing energy starts with awareness. You must know when you are at your peak. For some, it is early morning. For others, it is later in the day. High performers design their day around these peak periods. They don't fill them with meetings or minor tasks. They reserve them for thinking, creating, deciding, and building. This is not about working longer. It is about working when you are at your best. Energy is also emotional and mental, not just physical. Stress, indecision, and constant context switching exhaust the mind. When you allow too many open loops, your brain never rests. You may be sitting still, but mentally you are running. Energy management means closing loops, simplifying choices, and reducing unnecessary mental noise. Clarity restores energy faster than rest alone. Another mistake people make is believing energy is unlimited. It is not. It must be renewed. Sleep, movement, nutrition, and silence are not luxuries. They are performance tools. Ignoring them. The name of productivity is short-term thinking. You might win a day, but you will lose momentum over time. Sustainable success comes from respecting your limits and building systems that restore you instead of draining you. When you manage energy, discipline becomes easier. You don't need extreme willpower when your body and mind are aligned. Focus feels natural instead of forced. You stop relying on motivation because your environment and schedule support your performance. This is why energy management creates consistency. It removes friction from doing what matters. Energy management also teaches you to say no wit, without guilt. When you understand the cost of drained energy, you become selective. You stop committing to things that do not align with your goals. Protecting your energy becomes an act of self-respect, and with that respect comes confidence, clarity, and control. Time will pass whether you manage it or not. Energy, however, determines what happens while it passes. When you prioritize energy over, you stop racing the clock and start commanding your capacity. That shift changes everything. You don't just get more done, you get the right things done at the right time with the right intensity. And that is how real progress is made. Eliminate, automate, or delegate everything else, because doing everything yourself is not a badge of honor. It is a bottleneck. Most people are not overwhelmed. Because they have too much opportunity, they are overwhelmed because they refuse to let go. They hold on to tasks that drain their time and energy, believing that being busy means being valuable. In reality, busyness is often a sign of poor leverage. Every task you touch carries a hidden cost. It costs focus, energy, and opportunity. When you spend your day handling low-impact work, you are silently trading away high-impact results. Progress slows not because you lack ability, but because your attention is scattered across responsibilities that do not deserve it. The most successful people are not doing more than everyone else. They are doing less of the wrong things. Elimination comes first because many tasks should not exist at all. Some work is outdated. Some is unnecessary. Some exists only because that's how it's always been done. You question tasks honestly, you realize how much effort is being wasted maintaining habits that produce little or no return. Eliminating is powerful because it creates instant space. No tools, no systems, just the courage to stop. Automation comes next. There are tasks that must happen, but they don't require your personal attention. Repetitive actions are signals that a system should replace effort. When you automate, you reduce decision fatigue and remove friction from your day. You stop spending mental energy on predictable processes and free your mind for creativity and strategy. Automation is not about laziness. It is about efficiency with intention. Delegation is the final and most challenging step for many people because it requires trust. Delegating means accepting that someone else may do the task differently than you would, but that difference is not failure. When you delegate correctly, you are not losing control, you are gaining capacity. You shift from being the worker to being the director. That shift is where growth lives. People often resist delegation because they confuse control with security. They belie that if they let go, quality will drop. But holding everything yourself guarantees a different kind of drop. The drop in momentum, creativity, and long-term growth. You cannot scale what depends entirely on you. Your time is finite. Your impact doesn't have to be. When you eliminate, automate, and delegate, your role changes. You move out of constant execution and into decision-making. You stay. RT spending more time thinking, planning, and leading. That is where leverage multiplies. One good decision at the right level can outperform hours of effort at the wrong level. This discipline also clarifies your true value. When everything else is handled, what remains is the work only you can do. That work deserves your best energy. It is usually uncomfortable, mentally demanding, and easy to avoid, which is why distractions feel so attractive. But that is exactly the work that creates progress, income, and impact. Letting go is not about doing less for the sake of comfort. It is about doing less so that what you do matters more. When your day is no longer crowded with low-value tasks, focus sharpens. Energy rises, results accelerate. You stop feeling trapped by responsibility and star, feeling empowered by direction. Eliminate what doesn't matter. Automate what repeats. Delegate what others can handle. When you commit to that mindset, you stop being busy and start being effective. And that is when real growth becomes unavoidable. End the day with a scorecard, not excuses, because how you finish the day determines how you show up tomorrow. Most people end their day mentally exhausted and emotionally distracted. They scroll, they complain, they justify, and they disconnect without ever facing the truth of how the day actually went. That habit feels comfortable, but comfort is expensive. When you avoid evaluation, you repeat the same mistakes and call it routine. A scorecard forces honesty. It removes emotion and replaces it with facts. What did you intend to do today? And what actually got done? No stories, no explanations, just results. This is where growth either accelerates or stalls. Without reflection, experience has no value. You can live the same unproductive day 100 times and call it a year if you never stop to measure. Excuses are seductive because they protect the ego. They give you a reason why things didn't work instead of showing you how to. Make them work next time. But every excuse delays improvement. It shifts responsibility away from you and places it on circumstances, people, or timing. A scorecard does the opposite. It brings responsibility back into your control, where progress actually lives. Ending the day with a scorecard doesn't mean self-criticism. It means self-leadership. You are not judging your worth. You are evaluating your actions. There is a difference. When you separate who you are from what you did, you can improve without shame. You can see mistakes clearly instead of defensively. That clarity is powerful. A simple review changes everything. What worked today? What didn't? What needs to change tomorrow? These questions sharpen your awareness. Patterns start to emerge. You notice where time leaks. You notice which distractions keep stealing momentum. You notice which decisions move the needle and which ones only create noise. Over time, this awareness compounds into wisdom. Without a scorecard, ions dominate. A bad moment feels like a bad day. A busy day feels like a productive one. But feelings are unreliable indicators of progress. Results are not. When you track outcomes instead of moods, discipline grows. You stop relying on motivation and start relying on standards. Standards create consistency, and consistency creates momentum. Ending the day with reflection also closes mental loop. Unfinished thoughts and unresolved questions drain energy overnight. A scorecard clears the mind. It gives your brain permission to rest because tomorrow has already been prepared. That preparation improves sleep, focus, and confidence. You wake up knowing exactly where to aim instead of guessing again. People who avoid reflection often say they are too tired or too busy. In reality, they are avoiding discomfort. Looking honestly at your day requires courage. It forces you to confront gaps between intention and execution. But that discomfort is short-term. The cost of avoiding it is long-term stagnation. When you review your day consistently, improvement becomes inevitable. Small adjustments compound faster than dramatic changes attempted occasionally. You stop TR. You need to reinvent yourself and start refining yourself. Each day becomes a little sharper, a little more intentional, a little more aligned with who you are becoming. Ending the day with a scorecard is an act of respect for your future. It says that tomorrow matters enough to learn from today. It replaces excuses with ownership and confusion with clarity. And when clarity becomes your habit, S stops being accidental and starts becoming predictable. As we step into 2026, understand this clearly. Nothing changes all at once, but everything changes one day at a time. You don't win a year by accident, you win it by design. When you treat your day like a battlefield, decide the outcome before it begins, focus on one primary target, protect your energy, eliminate what doesn't matter, and end the day with honest reflection. You stop hoping for success and start engineering it. This is not about working harder. It's about working with intention. It's about waking up with clarity, moving with purpose, and going to sleep knowing you did what mattered most. When you control your day, chaos loses its power, distractions lose their grip, and excuses lose their voice. If you want 2026 trillions, be different. Don't wait for motivation, perfect conditions, or permission. Take control of the next day, then the next. Stack those days with discipline and clarity, and the results will compound whether the world cooperates or not. Control your day, and the year has no choice but to follow.